much. Mr. Andrews.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Thomas, on page 6 of your testimony, you note that the defense budget, including war costs, has gone from a little less than $400 billion in FY01 to around $700 billion in FY11 in constant dollars. You say that the buildup is markedly different from other defense buildups in the past because we didn't change end strength by very much, so it's not like you can let a lot of people go. And then you note that recapitalization and modernization plans for large parts of the forces are largely deferred. So the buildup didn't come from a lot of extra end strength, and it didn't come from a lot of modernization recapitalization. Since 2001, if you take us out to 2011, the defense budget is 76% higher than it was in 2001. And if you take away the OCO, if you take away the Iraq and Afghanistan spending, and you assume all that's gone, which I know you can't assume, but you take all that away, the core defense budget in constant dollars is 39% higher than it was in 2001. If we didn't spend it on end strength, and we didn't spend it on modernization, where's the money? Anybody have any ideas on that?
The buildup that we've seen over the past decade really departs from military buildups we've seen in the past, in the sense that it really has been, in many ways, a ghost buildup. We have not seen increases in large numbers of forces in our active component of the military. We have not seen something like the Reagan buildup, where we went out and procured all kinds of new systems, with some notable exceptions like the MRAP, which has been deployed in Iraq and Afghanistan. Where has the money gone? In particular, one of the main leaders in terms of cost growth in the department has been personnel costs.
You know, with all due respect, let's talk about that. Personnel costs went up by $39 billion, went up by 39%. So they account for $39 billion of this increase. So yes, they've gone up, but frankly, that's $39 billion of an increase that is $311 billion. So that accounts for a little bit more than 10% of it. Where's the rest?
I think it's a great question and a great way to phrase it and frame it. I think about 50 or 60 billion is in what I would call ending the procurement holiday. As you know, Congressman, we didn't spend much in the 1990s on buying equipment. We didn't need to at that point. But we've had to get back to spending roughly a quarter of the defense budget.
Actually, it's actually 27 billion of the 311.
Well, I think that I think it's a little more. I think in the 1990s we were averaging in the range of 45 to 50 billion a year on procurement, and we're now over 100.
Now, procurement was 77 billion in 2001. It's 104.
Well,
so
throughout
$27 billion.
77 in 2001.
Yep, it went from 77 to 101, so it's 27 billion out of the $311 billion increase.
Well, you have the advantage of a book in front of you that the overall 1990s average on procurement was 45 to 50 billion dollars, and I'm quite confident of that. We needed to get that number up by about 60 billion. And so I'm not really trying to disagree with you. I actually like this framing because I think it does point to where we need to look. Because the other point that I was going to get to, where I'm hopeful that we would be more in agreement, is that there have been a number of inefficiencies introduced. There have been some sloppy ways of spending money, and I think this builds on Jim's point as well. We have some of these things, frankly, have been part of the politics of a nation at war with an all-volunteer force. I think we've put too much money into retirement benefits.
I would ask Mr. Booth a question. That he talks about the 90,000 some troops in Europe and says that their mission really is not to defend the Europeans, to be forward to deployed to achieve other defense objectives. What defense objectives could not be achieved if that force were based on the continental United States instead of Europe? Tell me what specific objectives we could not achieve if we moved that force here.
Well, it would be very difficult to carry out operations, for example, as we recently did in Libya, if we were flying out of the continental United States, unless you were flying a B-2 from Missouri, which you can certainly do, but you're not going to be flying F-16s, F-15s, A-10s, and so forth. You're not going to be operating naval ships to blockade Libya out of Norfolk. You have to be forward
So
deployed
what
to
if
do
we
that.
got rid of all the bases that didn't have air capacity, then just kept the ones that have air capacity?
Well, you also have to have a point for Army troops, for example. Troops deploying to the Middle East often go through Germany, and troops that are evacuated, badly wounded troops who are evacuated from Iraq and Afghanistan, often go to a medical center in Germany, which is much closer to the theater of operations than would be if they were coming back to the United States. So there are huge benefits that we gain from having forward deployed
Mr. Chairman, I
bases.
know my time's up.
Again-
I'd be happy if the record could be supplemented by any of the witnesses.
I would appreciate
Thank you.
that.